And
So what Nick is saying about like SFID, a lot of people don't know really, I guess, but Lime Design is on the first floor of the SFID Tech Hub and Professional Building in 1918 Harrison Street. We're in downtown Hollywood, Florida, and it's, you know, on the first floor we have Lime Design, and on the top floor there's 16 other businesses that rent private offices and run their businesses from patent attorneys like Nick to other marketing companies, and you know, it's really it's about creating an ecosystem, like you're saying, that helps these companies work together, right? So this is a little bit about the company here, but we're downtown Hollywood, Florida. Do a little zoom in right there, right now, right next to the young circle right here.
it's actually a great idea too, because when you're a client, you don't necessarily know where to go for certain things,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I know that you have a large network of attorneys that you work with, but from our perspective, someone could come right upstairs and speak to me, right? And even earlier today, right,
There you got it.
I had a client that
Yeah.
had a need for your skills, and I was able to
Mm-hmm.
just bring them down and kind of
Yeah.
introduce them to you, show them around, and that type of ability makes scheduling your time easier, because if I were just to give someone a referral, right, and they would have to call, set up a meeting, that's another step that they'd have to do. Whereas on the way out, you just come in, you take a quick loop around the building, and then you know what you need to know to do.
Yeah, yeah. So before we asked about the second best advice, what is your first best advice for people that are, let's say, somebody that's new to the market, new to the game?
hmm
So
You got to be passionate about it. A lot of people will come up with a great idea and just not do anything about it. But if you come up with an idea that you think is a great idea, even if it's simple, right? Could be simple, could be complex. You need to be passionate about it, right?
mm-hmm.
Because that's going to drive you. Because there are going to be some hard decisions. You're going to have to pay um, different levels of professionals,
Mm-hmm.
right? Lawyers, developers,
Mm-hmm.
manufacturers. So you want to be all in, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be a crazy amount of money. We're not talking financially here, but you have to be very dedicated to the process,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to go through multiple revisions of products. You're going to file, you know, in many cases, many patents, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
going to put a portfolio together. So you got to be into the whole process, and it does take time,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Filing a patent can take time, granting the patent can take time. I know from our point of view, I mean, we've had clients that we've gone years where there have been multiple revisions to make it a final product. So
Mm-hmm.
you got to be passionate about it, because otherwise you're going to spend money and unfortunately drop the project.
Yeah, yeah.
But those clients that we've had that have moved forward with it have had some really great ideas, honestly.
Yeah. I think you know, to speak to that, like I like to work with clients that are like 80% stubborn and 20% flexible,
Yeah.
right? Because if you don't have that stubbornness, your vision will never get through,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because there's always factors that are trying to change an idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
One way or another, right? A lot of times, like my goal is trying to help a client to have in mind what it takes to get a project made. So if it's very complicated, I want them to focus on, hey, let's make something less complicated to start. And it's tricky because sometimes people come with their best idea, right, is a complicated idea.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we best help somebody that has no experience to take a very complicated idea and bring it into the real world with a very limited budget?
Yeah.
Right. It's really tricky, man.
I mean, that plays into even the legal aspect, right? Because if you come in with an idea that's so narrow and you invest in my services and we get, a great patent on this very narrowed idea, what happens when someone creates the next best idea,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your budget there is to make sure that you can monopolize on this, not to make sure that someone doesn't produce the exact invention.
Got you. Nick, so let's say that I have an idea for whatever, any project, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I do some basic Google searching and I find somebody that's doing something kind of similar to what I'm trying to do. What do you suggest? What's next?
Mm-hmm.
What should they do?
So here's where I'm going to get a little bit technical, and I apologize to anybody
Don't
watching that
apologize.
doesn't want that.
Don't apologize. They're here for learning.
But I mean, one of my biggest areas that I work with is finding the technical aspects of things, Right? What I mean with
Mm-hmm.
that is when you look at a patent, let's say you found one online, it's going to have a first independent claim, right? And that independent claim is the core of their invention.
Mm-hmm.
What the average person doesn't realize is that first independent claim doesn't mean that every single thing in there is protected. It's protected in the context of what's come before it. So when you file an application, right, you're going to have to make some amendments. And sometimes people will say, okay, just whatever the examiner says, amend it to, and I'll take that patent. The issue that creates is something called prosecution history estoppel. I know, pain in the ass word. But what that really means is I'm using A, B, C, and D from the public domain, and my patentable aspect here is element E.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have it with a lot of clients where they'll come to me and they'll say, I found this application. It does 90% of what I want to do. It doesn't have this last piece. Am I dead in the water? And I'll say, no. Let me do sometimes I call it a freedom to operate analysis. I will actually look at what the other application has filed. I'll look at the amendments that were made, and I'll
Mm-hmm.
put it in context for the client of this is the amendment they needed to make to
Mm-hmm.
get that patent. Therefore, if you're not infringing on this element, there's a good likelihood that we can get you either a patent, or if it's not a patent issue, or that you wouldn't infringe,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's a big aspect of it, because a lot of people see these patents and they get concerned that first off they can't get a patent, and then second off they'll be sued if they infringe on it.
Mm-hmm.
Just to really quickly go a little bit further down the line is, the reason prosecution history estoppel is a big issue is because there's something called the doctrine of equivalence, right? So if the inventor creates A, B, C, and D, and the prior art has A, B, C, and E, you're only looking at that last element. If it's equivalent, you might be infringing under the doctrine of equivalence, even though it's not infringing the exact product.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have that prosecution history estoppel where that first inventor changed something,
Mm-hmm.
now they can't claim the doctrine of equivalence because they had to make that change to avoid prior art. So you can actually use that last element that might be in the public domain. Maybe you don't get a patent on it, maybe you do, but if they lose that protection of doctrine of equivalence, they lose that overall scope, to be sued. So I think that's actually one thing that a lot of people towards the end do invest in is those freedom to operate analysis, because you
Mm-hmm.
want to see, if I'm producing this invention, maybe I have a patent, but am I going to infringe on somebody else? And if I have someone that I'm concerned about, what is the risk of exposure there?
Mm. So what kind of what does it cost to do one of these analysis for one of my clients?
So honestly, there's going to be a range, right?
Mm-hmm.
The lovely attorney answer, it depends,
Of
and
course,
there's
it
a
depends on the
range.
complexity and how much competition, I'm sure, but
So I've done actually many, right? And it's going to range from the scope of the project. I've had clients come to me before they even started designing and said, I need you to look at what exists in the market and what I could patent. The issue is I might be looking at 10, 20 patents and looking at their whole file histories. And that could be up to 10,000 or more.
mm-hmm.
But if you've already done a search and you've already identified some that might fall into that category, it could be 25 to 4,000, 2,500 to 4,000 per patent. But in all honesty, it really depends on the size of the patent,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I could look at it, it might have 10 claims and it's a very narrow claim,
Mm-hmm.
or I could look at it and it's going to have 50 claims. I could look at the prosecution history and there could be one amendment made or there could be 10 amendments made. So it really,
Yeah.
I would say, 2,500 would be the basis. 4,000 would be more what you're looking for, and then it could kind of go up from there.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's a detailed analysis. I'll look at the claims, what the claims actually mean in the context of the application, and take it a step further and figure out what the claims actually mean in the context of the file history.
You heard it here.
Oof.
Mind blown, man. That's a lot of stuff, man.
You know what? If your clients can kind of understand that whole premise, that saves them a lot of time and possibly attorney's fees figuring out what this is, but it's actually a very valuable service.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times people that are in risk of patent infringement will do the service just to make sure that if they do go toe to toe with another adversary, that they're prepared with why they don't infringe.
Another way of doing
Yeah.
it.
So,
Damn, man. I always love the conversations I have with you, man. It's, I try to absorb as much as I can.
mhm.
I not try, I absorb as much as I can. It's always so much, but it's, look, I think whenever you're building a team of who you're going to create your product with, it's not one person. You have to find the right specialist that understands the best way to move forward in each one of those aspects, right?
Mhm.
From patent law and protecting your idea to designing and engineering your product to marketing it and figuring out how to sell it and so forth.
Mhm.
So um, I'm proud to have Nick as one of our preferred partners, man. Uh, I see us working together for many, many, many years, and I look forward to, um, you know, just more conversations in the future, tackling other difficult things. Uh, Hit me up with any questions, guys. We want to answer those questions for you guys so that you guys are better prepared for things as they come up, right? So we talked about a lot of things today.
Mhm.
A little bit of patent infringement, a little bit about provisional patent, a little bit about how we know one another. Nick is in the building upstairs from Lime Design, guys, down here in Hollywood, Florida, in the heart of Hollywood, Florida. And we look forward to helping you learn more about product development and patenting your products. Thanks again for checking us out. If you guys found any value, I'm saying like 1% value, then you gotta like hit that like, click, do all the bell, all that stuff, guys. Thanks again. We'll see you on the next one.